Hello, and welcome back to my 486 project. To recap where we were last time, I got the ROM installed and working, and it's actually running code from the ROM. The code's just simply counting up and outputting it onto a port, but it's doing something, you know? Now, in the intern, I have done a little bit of cleanup on the board. The first most noticeable change is that there's now proper data buses, so it's really easy to see where the data goes and how everything is arranged, so that's going to make things a lot easier. Second, I was wrong. It turns out, and some of my commenters were very clear on this point, that I did need an extra buffer chip. It turns out that sometimes when it's writing data, the CPU will put data out on parts of the data bus that are not actually active. I believe this is related to dealing with the 8-bit bus mode. So it's like it's trying to write a 16-bit value. It writes the first 8 bits of it and then does it again. And when it tries to write the second part of the byte of the word, it just puts the exact same data back on the data bus and just changes what the output pins are, the output bytes are. So yeah, it just ends up putting noise on the bus, which causes things to go wrong. So instead, I have the buffer chip again. We'll see if this works correctly. I'm fairly sure my commenters were right. So I apologize. You guys were correct. I was wrong. Thank you, though, for correcting me. I do really appreciate that you can point out where I screw up. It helps a lot. That shouldn't have been there. Oops. Well, not cutting that out. All right. So today's goal is to actually get the RAM installed because, well, it's not very useful without RAM now, is it? Now, this is actually a fairly simple process. There's really only the RAM chip required. And otherwise, it's not that complicated. Let me just pop out the data sheet, or rather the example sheet. You may notice it's basically exactly the same as the RAM was, or the ROM was. The only difference is that the A31 line is not inverted, so the bottom half of memory is going to be this 132K of RAM, and the memory write line is attached to the write output, or the write enable. Otherwise, it's the exact same configuration. The only catch is that the pins are slightly different arranged between the ROM and the RAM. The RAM actually makes a lot more sense. The main thing here is that if we look at the ROM, you can see that we have address lines 0 through 7, and then all the other ones kind of jump around the chip, where with the RAM, we have the data pins and control lines, they're in the exact same spot. Then we have address line 0 up to 4, then 5 down to 14. So everything is nicely in order. So that will make it a little easier to wire up. I kind of wish both were done that way. It would make things a lot easier. But yeah, you can't always get what you want, you know? So with that said, I think it's time to go into the obligatory time lapse as I get all these little wire bits and pieces put in. Lots of time lapses, so. But otherwise, I just sit here and you just watch me work and I don't say anything. So, well, there we are. Okay, that's it all wired up. Now, everything is pretty straightforward. It's all wired up the same way. I actually really thought the board would look a lot more crowded than this. Still a little bit messier than I would like, so I might have to go back and readjust it later on. Let's not get those swapped. That would be embarrassing. So, okay. Now the first thing we want to do is to actually make sure everything still works. Get in there. Does not want to get in the hole sometimes. Alrighty. Yeah, the idea is I want to make sure everything still works. Make sure I didn't screw up something while wiring everything in together. I have done that way more often than I would like to admit, though I suspect that's a very common problem for people. Alright, there's that. Bring the output board over. Now, hopefully, everything should be fine. Nothing should have changed with this. Now, doesn't mean I haven't screwed it up. I'm really hoping I didn't. Alright, cross fingers, everything still works. Alrighty, fantastic. Everything is working fine. So, now we actually need to get to do something with the memory. So, that is going to require me to go to the computer and use, yep, there it is. Time to start updating the ROM. So, all right. There. All right. Load up ROM 2. Open. Okay. This is test ROM 2. You can see it says right there at the top. And this one, let me just program this. Okay. Not that you can see the programmer. But yeah, so this one here on test ROM 2 is pretty straightforward. All it does is much the same thing. It just, it clears out the AX register, sets the data segment to 0, sets AX back to 1, then writes that to memory, then jumps to the loop, which then reads the same memory, outputs that value, increments it, writes it, and then clears AX again. So this should be working the exact same way, but it should now be using memory to do it. Okay. So if all goes well, everything should work exactly the way it used to. Did I get that in right? Let's see. All right, hit the button. And 1, 2. Yes, it's working. And you can see the writes as well. That is fantastic. So the RAM is working. So I think the next big thing to do is to test all the RAM. Right, I just need to write something that will basically write every address and read it. But I need to get that done. And after that, that should be quick. I might do that on a live stream. I also need to well, I probably won't do that part on the live stream. I'll probably make a video out of it, but I do need to code the monitor program so we can actually start loading stuff into RAM. Although I could also do that with the monitor program, so yeah, we'll work it out. But yeah, so the next thing after that is to get the UART up and running. That way we can actually, use that monitor program to talk to it. That, though, that's going to be the next time. Because that one is got a level of complexity to it. Still, though, we now have RAM. So, on a very real level, this is a functional computer. Now, admittedly, it's kind of straining the term functional, but it is a functional computer. So, there we go. One step closer to actually being able to do stuff on this. Oh, and to answer the very common question, will it run Doom? Maybe. The 486 should be enough to run Doom, but A, I'm running at a fairly low megahertz, and even the actual requirements for Doom requires a 60 megahertz processor, not a 25. And secondly, I need a video card and I need sound as well. I mean, that would be cool. That's kind of a nebulous, well, if things go really well for a long time, might be able to get it to run Doom. Though I would have to make a custom build for it. But that's okay, I've done that before. For now, though, everything is working. So, alrighty, I think that wraps us up for today. So thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed this, and I will catch you next time.